Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the City Stage and Friends podcast. I'm Victor Johansson, along with Josiah Shellstrom and Francisco Corrales in the engineering room. Today, we have our very good friend, Kevin Otterness. You are a DP. Yes. Number one, thanks for being here. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I know you're closer to Chicago. You had to drive out here, though. Appreciate that. Yeah. We were just talking about the relationship of a DP with a director. There's a lot to explore there, but what do you think are some of the most important things for a DP to look at when working with a director they've not worked with before? And some of the first things that you want to address and some of those initial steps that you want to get through in order to like move forward with the project or whether you're saying yes or no to it.
Yeah, I think it all comes down really starting off with the script. You know, I think that's the first thing that's passed over. Usually in my past experience, the script is sent over to me first, you know, and see if I have an interest in that script. Yeah. So reading the script, getting back to the director, and then trying to find out what the director has done in their past. You know, it's kind of like doing your research on somebody. You know, it's like if someone's coming to me in regards to looking at my work, you know, what do you like about my work? They're going to kind of research me. You know, they're going to look at my website. They're going to, you know, possibly look at my Instagram. You know, they want to see a reel from me. So it's kind of the same way with a director. You know, what have you directed? Are you a first-time director?
They've been directing school plays, or is it
exactly? Yeah. Or, you know, are they, you know, shooting films, commercials, whatever that may be? So it's really trying to build up a relationship with that director, you know, because if you really think about it, it's the director and the DP that are, you know, should have these good communication skills happening on set. Yeah. So taking that time, learning about what the director has done in the past, I have them send over their past work that they've worked on, and they show it to me, and I can take a look at it, you know, and, you know, it was like this for the last project that I just wrapped up last month. So, but yeah, just building up that relationship with the director and having that communication skills open, you know, and being honest, you know, not being honest, not being a yes person. Yeah. Like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that, you know. But just being honest and having the time to sit back and kind of take it all in, you know, and, you know, what is the director thinking for this script? What does he want? You know, overall, the director has the final say in their film. But what can I bring to their script? You know, can I bring something unique to their script or something that they may have not thought of in regards to, you know, a shot or lighting, or something like, you know, anything along those lines. So, yeah, just, I can't say enough about being honest and upfront. And for the people that do know me, I'm very honest in this industry, what I think is going to work and what's not going to work.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, that's what's going to benefit the project the most. If you could just keep saying yes to things that are not valuable for the day, you know, no one wins from that, really. Right. You're going to be behind scrapping to get by. Yeah. You know, what do you think going into that a little bit more, into the relationship between the DP and director? What are some things you look for and see in good directors versus like green directors?
I think I've worked with both. Directors that have been doing it for a while, it's like clockwork. You know, I mean, you're going to have your challenges on set, no matter what. Yeah. But a director that is very trustworthy of their crew and their DP and what they can bring to the table, you know that when a director is just kind of like he's doing what he's there to do. He's there to direct, work with the actors. And all he has to do is show me the storyboard, and he's like, this is the shot I want to get. And we go do that. We set up for that. And you might make some little finer tweaks right there before you start rolling, but the director will just do what he needs to do, and we do what we need to do. So as a, you know, as a camera department, so or as a cinematographer. So, yeah. So, and then I think that's with more of a seasoned director. You'll see that they trust you.
Yeah.
They trust you. They've seen my previous work. So, and, you know, I'm being hired for a reason, you know. Hopefully they like my work. That's why I'm being hired. Or am I being hired just because I own a couple of Red cameras and pretty much all the gear for the camera department? So hopefully they're hiring me for my experience of being in this industry for a long time and for the look that I can provide to their film, their commercial, or whatever. I think with more green directors, everybody's different though. I mean, green directors may be a little bit more demanding, not knowing what it takes in order to accomplish a shot or what piece of gear it's going to take to do that.
How, you know, the thing is, how do you coach them through that? Let's say a director has something that you know is not going to work in for the day or in the shot, and how do you? Because it's such a tricky thing. You know, it's their vision.
It is,
and you want to make that happen. But how do you approach that when you know it's not the best thing for it, but they're kind of dead set on that? It's kind of a weird dynamic that you have to get through.
You do, and you have to sit back and you have to look at it from their perspective as well too. You know what they're asking for, and then I kind of take that back. And, you know, after let's say you have that first initial meeting and what they're expecting and what they want, I kind of don't respond on that day right away. I may be like, you know, let me take this back. Let me think about this. Let me see if I can make this work. And I'll ask right in the very beginning, you know, do you have a storyboard? Are you going to provide me a storyboard? You know, a shot list. Storyboard's great because then I can kind of see if the director is putting those storyboards together, I can see what he's kind of envisioning right there. So asking for those storyboards or that shot list, and I'll sit back and be like, okay, I can make this work, but I can't make this work. You know, so it's just like and of course it comes down to budget and what you can afford and what gear you can afford. Or, you know, are we using just what I have in my toolkit to get through your film to save money?
Or can we rent a techno crane?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So are we going to go beyond that, or are we going to go to a rental house? You know, and I prefer if we don't have to go to a rental house because I think we're going to save some money. So, you know, being a freelance cinematographer and then owning pretty much everything in a camera department does save directors, producers a lot of money. But yeah, so just taking that back and analyzing what can be done, and then having that follow-up meeting with the producer and the director, and you know, basically, you know, saying, hey, I don't want to crush your passion project, but I think this is what's going to work best to achieve this look.
I think that's the trick too, is like, instead of just being like, nah, that's not going to work, we don't have the money for that, you cheapskate. You know, you gotta approach it in a way that's like you're offering an alternative solution that accomplishes the same thing. Or at least as a gaffer, that's how I try to think. I'm like, no, we just can't do that. I'm like, well, what if we, you know, even suggest something maybe slightly outside of your part, and what if we change the frame up a little bit so that we can actually not light for 360 degrees or whatever they're initially thinking. That would save, you know, budget, whether it's equipment or crew's time. Like it's going to take 4 hours to set that up. We don't have that time.
Right.
Time is budget too.
Yeah.
Here's a solution that might help us stay in budget.
Yeah.
And do what the director is still trying to do.
And it all comes down to time. We're always wanting more time. Yeah. I'm sure.
That's the most expensive part, right?
That's the most expensive part. And it's just like, you know, this industry, I think, is, you know, we're all pressured under that time and people looking over our shoulders and doing that. But it's just like, at the end of the day, I want to walk away being happy with what I did. You know, I want to be like, hey, we achieved this. I don't want to walk at the end of the day and have I don't want to be disappointed. So in my shot selections or my setups or how I lit something, all that. So, I mean,
especially as the DP, because your name is so much attached to the images that you put out. Like, it's not like some other departments where it's really about the experience on the day. Like, you could care less, in a way. I mean, like, maybe you're a car rigger or something, a key grip.
Yeah.
It's like you're passionate about what you do. You're skilled, and you bring something to set. But it's not like someone looks at that image and they're like, "Wow, that key grip sucks." It's like, no.
Right. Well, everybody contributes to that image, and it's just not me. It's the art department. It's wardrobe. It's makeup. It's all of that. It's just not me. I mean, let's face it. Lighting is number one on the list. To making a good-looking image.
Yeah.
Whether it's done, practically or natural or whatever, lighting is key. I mean, if you look at it, if you have a great picture, great lighting and stuff like that, and then let's just say you have this great looking movie, but sound sucks, the whole experience is ruined.
Yeah.
So everybody plays such a, key role in bringing a film together. It's, everybody is important. There's not one person on set that is not important. It trickles all the way down to everyone, down to the PAs, and doing their work, or you wouldn't make it through that day. So,
absolutely. And I didn't mean to belittle anyone by any means.
No, you're not.
Yeah, maybe more just suggesting that.
Yeah.
As a DP, like, that's how you get a lot of jobs too. Is like everyone wants to see what you've done.
Right.
As a
and
other departments are not looking at that as they're more looking at how well you work with people or your reputation in the industry as just like a person.
Yeah.
Than like specifically the images that you're attached to.
Right. And here's that thing too. I have this, as I've been in this industry for a long time, I've been more controlling of what I shoot.
Sure.
And how I shoot it and how the end results are going to be. I like to kind of call it respecting the process. And I think it's kind of slipping away these days. And like I said, this is just from my experience, but a DP having control over his image from the day of production through the edit to coloring. I feel that is more of a, like, maybe a dying breed these days, that you're not getting into, not so much the editing room, but when it comes to the coloring process.
How the individual frames look.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. Because I've been on shoots. I've shot 2 features, and I just had one that was released they did a premiere this past month. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the premiere, but there are some shots I would not have chosen. It was just like, that wasn't even a shot, guys. We were backing up the camera, and it's happened to so many people in this industry, having control over that. And it's just like, I don't have, how can I regain control? That's not a shot. Or how do you it's like having a good editor, it's just like, are you looking through all the footage? Are you really sitting down? Because, I edit as well. I color as well too. So I kind of learned this industry, learning a little bit about each department. But it's really about having control over your image, and you're lighting it that way too when you're on set. You're lighting it a certain way, and you're like, okay, how much of this can I bake into the image so that when it does get to post and to coloring, that all they have to do is maybe do a little finessing, and that's it, and not do a complete overhaul. So I'm baking my look into the frame.
Yeah. So do you take into account, when you jump on a project, do you take into account who's going to be coloring and who's going to be editing it all?
So I think it varies on projects. So because I've shot things that are corporate. I've shot high-end interviews. I've done music videos. So it all really comes down to who's producing or directing that project, I think. So I've been all over the board, and this is where I'm trying to kind of bring all that in. And so I do have control over it because my name is on that image, and that's what's going to get me possibly my next job.
Yeah.
So with commercials, I've experienced with, I'll use an example. This wasn't a commercial, but I think a lot of people know the show Ghost Hunters, right? So great producer, great director. They came out here and they shot, we shot promos for a show that they were shooting at the Joliet prison.
Oh, yeah.
In Joliet. So we came out and we were using the cast and we were shooting them. So we were getting headshots, we were getting the group shots, like when they're promoting a show, they have them turn towards the camera or they have them look into the camera and stuff like that. So I was shooting all that stuff. And that was a great project for like 2 or 3 days. And, but basically that project was handed off, that day on the last day of shooting, the footage was offloaded, sent to them, and it's gone. I have no control over that. So they make it look what's going to work for them for that show. So, but in the back of my head, I'm kind of like, oh, this could look really great, if you take this into coloring. So I basically took the footage myself and colored it myself for my purposes to show off my skills as a cinematographer or for lighting and stuff like that. And it was funny because once they did release it, I never saw anything until that show was going to be released, and they were they're still using footage from that shoot for their opening of their show now and stuff like that. But it's completely different.
The color, the grade.
The color grade is completely different. It's more flat. It's just more all just blue. And that's what they're trying to go for. That's Ghost Hunters there for you. So, and I had a lot of people comment on there, like after they saw it air and then they saw it, my color grade, and they're like, oh, your coloring was so much better. It looked so good. And I go, I just don't have control over that, So for commercials and stuff like that, there's a lot of commercials that will use a LUT on set. So they'll want a kind of a baked in
ballpark.
Look. What it's going to look like. And then you'll have a DIT on set that's also controlling that. And that's where the director or the producers can come up and give their input. So I'm basically, that stuff is all being kind of passed off. But when it comes down to more personal projects or more maybe like indie features or indie shorts that I'm specifically, have control, I'm shooting, I really want to rein in that control of being able to be like, hey, I'm lighting it to look like this. So I can already envision what it's going to look like. So what I've been trying to do for the most part is sell myself as the DP. If you're not going to invite me to the coloring room afterwards, it's just like, it kind of makes me think. It makes me like, well, what are you guys going to do to my image?
Yeah.
And it's trying to get back that control and being able to respect the process, know what it takes in order to do this, because there have been projects that people have gone out there because you can shoot, you're shooting raw on red cameras and stuff like that. They haven't touched it.
Yeah, it's just like flat and it's like that's
or it's just it's flattened or it's just a typical Rec 709 LUT thrown on there. I'm like, we did this a certain way so that you can manipulate this. Yeah. And this is how it really should look in post. Yeah. So my name is all over that. And I make it very clear to people. I'm like, hey, that's me. That's
an important point. And I remember we had a conversation a while ago and you brought that up, and I thought that was very interesting. The fact that, we don't have, once that footage is off, it's, if you're just not editing, involved in that process, it's gone.
Yeah, it is.
But on the flip side, though, I think there's also, you get hired. I mean, you have a large following on Instagram, and you get hired off of the best work you've done. So if a director or a producer sees the best work you've done, they go, okay. If given the right circumstance, I think there's a level of understanding that they go, okay, he can perform very well if he's given the right tools and the
time.
people.
Right.
Yeah, the
So
crew.
I think, I don't know. That's where, yeah. If you pass on footage and it looks like crap after a color pass of someone else's, you still have your consistent. You know what I mean? So it's not like everything, but as a whole, especially if you're shooting, multiple times a week, a month, and that footage is going all over the place. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Tell me how much this plays into your decision-making process as well. So a lot of times on indie films and stuff, the rates just aren't as good as commercial. That's pretty much the way it is.
Correct. I mean, I've worked on indie,
Sometimes it is.
indie feature that paid full rates.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But how, say I assume at times you take, less than your typical commercial rate for
I have.
for something like that.
Oh, absolutely.
So in that situation, I feel like you're more within your right to be like, yeah, I'll give
have
a
a say.
concession if you give me a concession that I have more control. Like that has always been. I mean, I haven't really produced my own indie film in some time now, but that was one of my things. Was if I'm going to, put all into this project,
and give up,
whatever, my time, my resources, my whatever. It's like there's got to be more creative control for me in that instance.
Yeah, and you know what? I think some of that that can backfire on you sometimes as well too. So it's just like sometimes you'll have like I said, I've worked with many directors, and they'll come in and they have their vision and that's it, and there's no say. So there's really that's not a collaborative effort for me, So trying to, because you want to work, you want to, if it's slow, you want to be working, you want to work on something creative, and stuff like that. And it's just like, okay, and hopefully that kind of comes through on the interview process, when you're first talking with first-time director or that you're going to be working with. Because with the directors that, some of them I've worked with multiple times on many commercials. And it's just like, we click. They know exactly what they're going to get when they use me as their DP. But yeah, it's just a matter of finding that balance, I think, with somebody. But there are the people that will be like, nope, I have my people to do that. And it's just like, I'm not.
Then you just consider, is that still worth it to me to take
exactly? And you have to think about that. You really have to think about that. And what you need to do and lesson learned is to negotiate that right in the beginning, because then that's going to give you that time to be like, do I want to work on this project or do I not want to work on this project?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I understand it's their film. They, of course, I want to give them what they want. But if I have no say in what this image is going to look like in the end, then you got to kind of take it back for a second and really decide, is it worth it to have your name on this project? And then you go see it, because like on the TV side, for commercials and stuff like that, I don't see it until it airs, And I mean, sometimes I'm like, why does that project look so familiar? Oh my gosh, I shot that. It's so long between production and when it's released. But
and different people's ideas of creative control might go to different lengths too. Like
exactly.
for you're a colorist, there's a lot of DPs that aren't as well. So it might be a level of control that they have on set that maybe they wouldn't with certain directors or what have you. So.
Exactly. I mean, everybody's different, and you got to think about, I like to think when I'm hired that I'm being hired because of the look of the shot, you know, is that the look that you're trying to go for? I mean, why else are you hiring me as your DP cinematographer? You know, or am I just the guy coming in that can provide the cameras and point and shoot?
Yeah.
And that's not me.
I wonder if that's a really good note for producers to have, just to even go and send, even if it's a commercial thing, like send it to the DP and say, hey, what do you think of this? This is our cut. You know, is this, I know that it's not like it's probably not a common thing, but if I kind of am wondering if that's what I would want to do on all my projects, is to kind of verify it by the DP, just to say, hey, this is what we got. This is what the colorist editor did. What do you think? You know, that might be a good note.
I think it is. I think it's a good note for, you know, once again, it depends on the project, you know? So,
I mean, even the commercial stuff, it's just like a courtesy, like a.
It is. But I think it's also like, you know, it's obviously comes down to money, you know, everything comes down to money, and be like, oh, now we got to pay the DP to come in and sit through a color session, you know, and you hear that a lot, and it's just like, well, hey, but you're hiring a DP that does coloring, and you're hiring me because you liked what you saw of my work. So why would you not at least inquire about, hey, getting my input on the image? So
no, I mean, that makes sense. And you color and shoot. So
color,
that
shoot, and I edit.
Edit. Yeah. You know, so you said you've been doing this for a long time. How many years have you been in the industry?
30 years.
30 years. Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, that's older than I am.
I'm probably older than both of you.
I'm very grateful to have you here. That's a lot of years. That's a lot of knowledge that you just. And I always think about. We just had a couple guys in here that do have a video production company, have had it since the 90s, and I just go, the wealth of knowledge and information and experiences and the people that you've interacted with and the challenges that you've gone through, the pros, the cons. It's I'm excited to get to that point in my life where I get to kind of glean all this information, but now I just get to talk to people who have been. So I'm very grateful you're here. So looking back at this is kind of two-part question, but looking back at the 30 years, what kind of work have you been involved in, like commercially, and you're on films, feature films, short films, and then how did you start in this? What was it that, how old were you when you decided to go down this route?
So I'll start with the second question. I started, so it all started when my dad took me to go see a small film called Star Wars back in 1977.
I've heard about it.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. The space opera. And it's funny they mentioned.
How old were you at the time?
I was 7 years old.
7.
So, of course, you know, as a kid, you know, from I can remember as a kid, I grew up, you know, I was into Matchbox cars. I was into trains. I think I wanted to be a police officer at one time, all these different things. And then my dad took me to go see this film. And I remember sitting there watching it. And I remember walking out of the theater down the aisle with my dad. And I think my dad asked me, like, so did you like it? And I'm like, yeah, it was really cool. But as I was walking out, it hit me. I'm like, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. I knew it right there and then. And I didn't say that out loud to my dad, but I knew it. I'm like, that is it.
So you made the connection at 7 years old that somebody made that thing. Somebody was
someone made it. And the question in my head is like, how did they do that for that time back in 1975, 1976, you know, and a lot has to do now with, which is called ILM, you know, Phil Tippett, Richard Edlin, all those guys over at the VFX, because they made it look so real for that time, and it was all shot on film. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, I'm going to figure that out. That's what I want to do. Great story, completely different for its time. And, I think George Lucas he's said in several interviews, it was geared for 10-year-olds. I was 7 at the time. So it was supposed to be a kid's movie, and it just exploded,
Yeah.
And so I knew from a very early age, and there was nothing that was gonna sidetrack me from doing that. So
I feel like you're the third person we've talked to who Star Wars was like the thing that got them into filmmaking.
yeah, there's a lot of people out there that it influenced a lot of filmmakers at that time, and or young kids that eventually went into this industry. So,
which is crazy to look at the cultural impact a story, a film can have. You translate that to police, you translate to the firefighters, something like that. You might train a whole new generation of people wanting to get in positions, nursing, things like that. That's an incredible power that cinema wields.
It does. It is. And,
Top Gun, for instance.
Yeah.
They say Top Gun was like the top it recruited more people for the Navy than anything else.
Well, there's conspiracies where people think that it actually was was funded by the
what a great film,
the government,
and what a great follow-up film too. Man.
Yeah. So after that, I was 7 years old. I think the action figures for Star Wars came out. I mean, Hasbro, they were based out of Ohio somewhere, and they came up with a small line of action figures, and they just couldn't keep up with them. So they weren't prepared for this movie to be such a success. And I remember my dad coming to me, and I think the action figures were finally out in the store. And it's funny, I brought one today with me, and this is what inspired me, and hopefully it inspired others. So my first action figure.
Dude, that's awesome.
Dang.
My dad took me, back in 1977. It's not in the package, but
so that's from that year.
Yeah, put it up front there. Maybe Kiko can zoom in on it. Just sit on the table here.
Yeah. That's from 1977. That's the first action figure that my dad bought me. And so he created another monster after doing that. But that's what inspired me. And so he took me to get that. And I think at the time there was like 12 figures that were going to be released. And, I didn't grow up in a wealthy family or anything like that. And they were like $1.28 at the time, maybe $1.30. Now they're like $13, $14, $15 a piece. But so I wanted to collect all 12. I'm like, oh man, this is great. So I got big into Star Wars. And so as the time went on, I started collecting. And I think a few years went by, and then the sequel, The Empire Strikes Back, was going to be released in 1980. And I remember going to the theater with my parents and my one aunt and uncle. And we went there to go see The Empire Strikes Back. And, of course, I was, loved it,
Yeah.
And I remember when we walked out of seeing Empire Strikes Back, my aunt is like, hey, you have all these figures now and stuff like that. She's like, hey, would you, want to come over to my house someday and I'll show you how to do stop motion animation.
Ooh.
So I remember going over to her house and kitchen table being set up, and she had a film camera. Little Super 8 that had stop motion on it. And we bought one roll of film, Super 8, threw it in there, and brought all my action figures. And to get some of them to stand up, I had like Play-Doh at the bottom or something like that to get them to stand and all that. And so shot my first film. Spent all day to shoot a 3-minute film, animation film. So after that,
Can we see this somewhere? Or?
yeah, you can. If you go, if you go to my Vimeo page, it's just Kevin Otterness, and then it's called Rise of the Filmmaker, and it's my first 3-minute film that I made.
That's cool.
As a 9-10-year-old.
Sorry.
And
What's that?
That's my bad. I stole the computer monitor from Kiko. For the, I meant to mention that to you guys.
he's like, I'm trying to look. Oh, I can't look that up.
We had this big production out in the studio today, and we were just like giving them all the stuff
Everything
they
that you
needed,
could,
and
yeah.
they're like,
Yeah.
we
Completely
we can
understand.
get you one of those.
Yeah. Well, what I do is.
Do you mind?
No, not at all. But
That's very cool. Look
That
at
is very cool.
It's very inspiring. So,
And it's like looking at this, you know, and not to get too sentimental, but it's like it started from this, and now your entire kind of career life is focused around what started this. Yeah,
exactly.
That is
Exactly.
It's very cool. I actually have not seen one of these.
Really?
Yeah.
And that's an original. That's an original.
Wow.
That's an original 1977, and I've become a big collector.
So Chris,
From there on,
who you re-met again,
Yeah.
he's big into comics, so we got to show this to him.
oh, definitely.
Comics and toys. So
Okay.
he's a
basically
collector.
bought a toy store, like
Yeah.
Wow.
collection.
Oh,
Yeah,
see,
yeah.
that's incredible. So, yeah, I have a collection that is now insured because I own so much of this stuff, and that's in its original packaging
Oh wow.
and stuff like that. So my parents kept on buying me this stuff because I was so hooked. And one point with the toy, I feel that these days now that, you know, kids are so much into their video games and stuff like that toys are.
It's. I was just gonna say, like, you know what I really miss is toy stores. Like they just. I mean,
There's no Toys R Us,
KB Toys,
Yeah.
all this.
It's gone.
It's so sad. Like,
And then you go to the grocery store and there's a toy aisle, and it's so sad
like,
these days.
Maybe Walmart
Yeah.
is like about the best place. I mean, it's like
possibly.
like maybe 4 or 5 aisles, you know. But it's
Yeah.
nothing like walking into a store that's just dedicated to toys.
Right.
and action
My
figures
dad
and-
would take me every Sunday. So would take me every Sunday to Toys R Us. And as the figures were coming out, and I remember there were figures really hard to buy or find because they would only make so many of them.
Yeah.
So we'd go there, and we'd go to Toys R Us, and it was in Downers Grove. I grew up in Downers Grove, and go to the one Toys R Us, and we go in, and there'd be stuff on the shelves, but obviously not the figure I was looking for. And then we would find a store clerk, and we would be like, "Hey, do you guys have any in the back?
In.
Do you guys have any in the back?" And they're like, "I don't know. Oh, let me go check. We'll go check for you." Sure enough, they come out with a brand new box. And it's like,
That's the one.
That's the one I've been looking for. So that was something I shared with my dad, and had a great experience at doing that. And but what came next was, after I made this short film with my aunt, she showed it. We set up like a family night or something like that with my other aunts, uncles, and my parents, and to show the first film. And she put it on the 8mm projector and projected it and stuff like that. And we took a cassette track and put some music behind it, and played it. And it was just like, wow, I'm showing my first film and stuff like that. So I think it was for my 10th birthday or my 11th birthday, my dad treated me to, and I brought it,
So prepared. Look at this.
treated me to my first camera.
Oh, look at that.
Wow.
Bell and Howell.
Bell and Howell. It still works, and it has stop motion animation on it, single frame. So,
That is
All right, now
cool.
I have to see this.
yep. So if you turn it on, probably get a little beep out of it, and
Wow.
still works. And then you have single frame. So if you were doing animation, you would shoot this 3 frames, and then you would move it slightly.
Wait, three frames.
3
Or
frames.
3 clicks to advance to the next frame? Or what was the 3
yeah.
clicks?
So it was always 3 frames. That's what I learned. My aunt's like, "Oh, click at 3 frames." So you're gonna start getting a nice, decent motion out of it. So
More
it'd be
smooth or?
yeah.
Oh, that's just how long you want to I see.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. You
'cause
want to take
otherwise-
So it would be three clicks, next frame, 3 clicks on the film. So
Wow.
yeah, and all still works, and
That is very cool.
yeah. So that was my very first camera.
Yeah,
Should I be
Josiah
able to see
geeks
through
out
that
over
Yeah,
there.
yeah. They're so
Oh, I
they're
see.
so fun, and you can zoom in and zoom out on top there. So
Oh, yeah.
yep. So if you push those buttons up there, it will. If it's on, is it still on? Yeah. So it should
Wow.
zoom in and zoom out. It might. Is it in macro for? Yeah. You got to have it. Oh, take it out of single frame, put it on, click it over. Now there you go. Now if you. It does still work. I just tested it
No, I-
yesterday.
totally agree.
But yeah, it's so. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Makes me want to go shoot something.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
Makes
I know.
makes me want to go buy a roll of film and get out there and do
Guys,
that.
I'm so sorry. Can we pause for a sec?
Sure.
All right, we're back. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually, do you mind if I hold
No,
this?
no. Go right ahead. Turn
I
it
have
on.
never actually even touched one of these.
Wow.
This is so cool.
Yeah.
You know,
It's just showing my age there, Victor.
no, you know, people always say, I want to be older. I'm very excited to be at that place where I can look back and just have the experience and have that that wisdom in different scenarios. So people always kind of talk derogatorily,
perhaps.
there you go, towards their age, you know, just because that's a thing people say. But I always go, no, dude, that's a great place to be. I wish I was on the flip side, because the things that you know are not what I know, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the industry has definitely changed a lot.
Yeah.
Things have advanced and all that. But you know, enjoy your youth and slow things down, because I remember being a kid, remembering be like, oh, I can't wait to drive. I can't wait to do this. I want to own my own stuff and all that, even though it was very hard to achieve getting certain stuff like cameras and stuff like that. But yeah, enjoy it now, because I'm trying to slow things down now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really want to slow things down. I mean, life is going by way so fast.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm at the age where, you know, you just do as much as you can and hustle as much as you can, which is great. That's the good part of the youth. But, you know, so going from that with your aunt and doing the stop motion, which is really awesome, by the way, that she recognized that in you as a kid. So was that like 8 years old, somewhere in there?
So I was 7 years old when I did my first film.
7. That was
7.
okay.
Yeah.
Right after Star Wars. You saw it,
yeah. I was probably 10 when I did my first film. I got interested in the industry at 7 because of Star Wars. Did my first film probably by 9 or 10, and then went from kind of there on from there. But, you know, obviously, you know, I was 10 years old, 11 years old. No one's going to give me a job. You know, it's like, you know, I got to wait until I'm 16 to get my first job. I want to make money. I want to be able to do
How
certain
did you
things.
transition? Because it's like at that time, I'm just always I'm fascinated by how it was back then, because you have so much access to resources now.
Yeah.
YouTube, just alone YouTube, without the cheap gear that you can start out with, little lights, and you could film in your own room, whatever. It wasn't that the case then. So how do you, what was the first point that you were gearing towards this as more of a career and an option?
Yeah, because I grew up with no internet.
Yeah.
I had to, you know, if you had to call a place, you opened up the yellow pages and you found the phone number. So I made the transition. It wasn't a first, so I did get a job. I continued doing my stop motion animation because I was so much into that, and I had control 100% over this. No one could tell me what I could and could not do. And my parents were good enough, you know, living with my parents, we would go get some sand and bring it into my room. It'd be all dusty, and we would recreate the planets or baking soda for the ice planet and stuff like that. I was bringing in all this stuff, you know, to make my short films with animation and, or my Star Wars figures. And so I continued doing that probably until I was, probably up until I was probably 16. And then it was time like, I got to get a job. I want to work. As soon as I turned 16, I was applying for a job. So I applied at the local theater. It's the Tivoli Theater in downtown Downers Grove. It's a large classic cinemas theater. It holds like about 1,000 people.
Wow.
And so I applied there and got my first job as a, usher at a theater. I knew I wanted to be around movies. So it was a great place to start. So, and we had some amazing prints come through there, like 70 millimeter prints that came through there for like Star Trek 4 at the time. It was like one of the only theaters that had this. There was a special print of Star Trek 4. I think it was the one with the whales. I think that's Star Trek 4. And where they go back to the planet Earth and stuff like that. And I remember cleaning up one night at the theater, and my manager's like, "Oh, hey, just finish cleaning up, locking up, and stuff like that." And she goes, "But keep these areas open because we have someone coming in this evening." I'm like, "Who's coming in?" And she's like, "Oh, well, you're welcome to stay." And I'm like, "Who's coming in?" They're like, "Oh, the executive producer from Star Trek 4 is coming here to Downers Grove to see the special screening of this print because it was advertised all over the place for this special print because the sound would actually rattle the doors on this huge movie theater." Wow. And it was incredible. And like I said, it was a 70 millimeter print. And so sure enough, here comes this limo about midnight, and I'm still in high school, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, they're not coming until midnight." And I'm like, called my parents. I'm like, "I'm not coming home tonight. I'm not coming. I have to be here to witness this, to meet the executive producer, blah, 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 and kind of watch some of this film, even though I'm going to see it several times being an usher."
Was he making sure it was like up to snuff, or was this like a screening for him almost?
I think it was just like a screening because of the sound system that we had. And this print was especially, for a theater like this.
Okay, and there's only so many of those theaters across the country.
We were the only one in the Chicago area that had this print. Okay. Wow. And with this special sound on it. And
Chicago's a big market to only have one theater like that.
Yeah. So it was just like, and especially for this print, that's where they were going to show it. And no joke, that film was there probably for over a month and a half. And we sold out every night. Wow. And we had people probably fire hazard nowadays, but people were sitting on the hard floor up front, the cement floor. Wow. Because we're talking like an old classic cinema theater that had the orchestra pit and stuff like that, had an organ. They had an organ player before the movies would show, stuff like that come in.
Oh, wow.
So, just
Is
a great
it still
thing.
around?
Oh, it's still there. And now they own a lot of other theaters to this day too. So, so I remember staying there and the limousine pulls up around midnight and stuff like that. The guy gets out and they go in, the manager comes in. She's like, "Yeah, just sit down, we'll chat." Here I'm a 16-year-old kid, sit next to a executive producer, of Star Trek 4 for this special print. And it's so funny. You used to take the garbage outside at the end or during the film and stuff like that, because you would help out the concession people, and the doors would just be rattling with this special print. It was so cool. That was my first job, and I was there for probably like 3 or 4 years. Making my big $3.25 an hour.
$3.25.
Yeah, $3.25 an hour. And then there was one, I'll try to keep this kind of short, but so I knew what I wanted to do. And a best friend of mine, he's no longer here or with us, but we're like, I want to do something, So I reached out, looked up in the Yellow Pages, and every community usually has like a public access station, for the community. And they do, their community meetings and stuff like that. And they air them for the residents and all that too. So, Downers Grove had, a government facility that did just that. And so looked at the Yellow Pages. I'm like, we came up with this idea for reviewing movies, and we were 16, 17 years old. What else are we going to do? You know? So it's like, let's just call them up. So we look them up in the Yellow Pages and we call them up and we're like, hey, my name's so-and-so, my friend here and I, hey, you're a public access station. We kind of know what you kind of do in regards to like, people come in and can create shows. So we came up with this show and he's like, okay, well, in a couple of weeks, we'll set up a date. He goes, bring me, put something together for me, kind of like a pitch deck, package of this. So we came up with this show and we go in to meet him, and I still friends with him to this day. His name is Greg Peters. He ran the Downers Grove community access station, and went in there, sat down at his desk and pitched him. And he's like, all right, we shoot your first show next month. I'm like, sweet. Yes. So that's where it began, but we didn't get paid. We didn't get paid to do that. Sure. It was public access, and we went in to do our thing, and
they were happy for some interesting content.
Sure. It was interesting. All right. It was me and my friend, and we looked like a deer in the headlights because we were on camera. We were talking about these films, and you go back and I still have those shows to this day. You go back and you look at those and you're like, oh my gosh, this is like 1986, 87. And, everything's recorded on the big 3/4 tapes and decks and stuff like that. It wasn't Betacam in there, but it was the real big tapes. And so we did our first show. We didn't have any control over the editing. They would cut it together. And I remember it airing the first time. And, there's no special look in how they switch over programming. It goes from their community screen, like gives details, like it's a computer screen, and then a show will pop up, So it's like push the button, click, and there it is. And you see a little bit of the tape kind of like, the lines in it and stuff like that on the 3/4 deck or tapes. And saw the first show air. I remember getting my parents together and, we're watching on this big tube TV, in the living room. And my parents sat down with myself and we watched it. And I was like, okay, all right. I'm not an on-camera person, but I did it. And we probably did like 30 episodes or more of that. And continued doing that for a while. And then finally, after that, I was offered a job there. Well, I did retail and stuff like that in the meantime. But I was still working with this community access station, hoping they would maybe ask me to come and work for them because they had a studio. They had an editing suite that was all tape to tape, 3/4 deck editing and stuff like that. So eventually they turned around and offered me a job back in like 1990.
Okay.
So I remember getting the phone call. I was working for a men's clothing store in Fox Valley, and they called me there. They called me there, and they're like, "Hey, you still want the job?" I'm like, "Yes." I quit like 2 weeks later at the clothing store and went to go work at the public access station.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how do you at that point? I assume you were there for a number of years, just kind of learning and getting your.
I was there
together.
for a number of years. Eventually became studio manager. I ended up down the road creating building a remote truck for them to go out into the field. Yeah, so they gave the shell of this brand new remote truck van, and stuff like that, and I sat down with the technical people. I'm not a very technical person, but it's like, what's going to work in here? How can we roll these carts in and out of this production truck to make it a live truck to going to roll things into the studio? So they wanted to combine the studio and the remote truck together in regards to the gear. So you would roll it up into all the truck and, figure all that out. So I ended up doing all of that.
You were like 20?
Let's see, 1990, 20. Well, that was a little bit later on. So I was probably like around 23, 24 when I kind of put that truck together.
It's a good amount of responsibility for that age.
Yeah. And at the time, the original manager left. He left there. and another guy came in and wasn't too crazy about me, but because I just felt like I knew the place very well and stuff like that. But I respected him in regards to, you know, what he wanted me to do. He gave me the go ahead to put this remote truck together and wanted me to do it, build it from ground up. And I'm like, yeah, I think I can handle that. I mean, you know, what do I got to lose? So did that. And eventually there started to become, you know, problems between, you know, well, did that first show with them for quite some time. And then back in 92, 93, I decided to be like, hey, I want to make something really good. I want to make something that people are going to know that I created and shot. So my friend and I'm like, hey, do you want to be a part of this? And he was a little upset that, you know, I didn't want to be a part of this first show that we did when we were 16, 17 anymore. You know, it was called Off the Wall. And, you know, we reviewed these movies and had some movie posters in the background and stuff like that. But anyhow, I'm like, I want to, because MTV was big at the time, you know, really big with their shows, their reality shows and stuff like that. Everything was really fast paced and stuff like that. I'm like, that's what I want to do. I want to learn how to edit and shoot. You know, I was shooting anyway, but I really wanted to learn how to edit. And I wanted to make things look cinematic. I didn't want it to look like a flat reality TV show. So, so I started putting this whole show together. We would go out and shoot unique things. Like we would go to the openings of Planet Hollywood when all these movie stars would come in there, do interviews with them. We go do local things like go to laser tag and shoot laser tag, but it was cut together MTV kind of a style and stuff like that. And what made it possible, I don't know if anyone remembers, the New Tech video toaster was a big thing. So if you ever get a chance to look that up, it was basically a transition computer that you could overlay like lower thirds or do effects, kind of simple, basic effects with it.
Okay.
And there was this one little button in there because the whole goal was to make this show look like we spent millions on it, you know, doing this show. It's a 30-minute show. We had different segments, you know, one topic, well, to say it's laser tag. The next time we were at the Planet Hollywood premiere down in Chicago. And then we were doing interviews with the cast from Star Wars. You know, I mean, that's how many, you know, that's who we had on that show. And I pretty much did it all. You know, I was like shooting it. Then the people that were hosting, they would kind of produce and find segments and stuff like that. And they were all doing it for free. We were just I was trying to create something that was just going to stand above public access images, you know, or other shows. And
you feel like you succeeded at that?
I succeeded. I knew I succeeded when we start winning all these awards. So we won a lot of local awards. Then we won national awards. And the show was called Technical Difficulties Television. So we just labeled it as TDTV. And we would have, you know, 4 or 5 hosts, and then we would have all these different segments and go out there. But what the goal, like I said in the beginning, was to make the image. Always in the back of my head has been like, everything's got to look cinematic. It's got to look
like Star Wars. It's got to be a movie.
Why do you think? Because I remember having that. You know, Lord of the Rings was kind of that film for me, and I just love the way the certain scenes made me feel, and the way actors would interact, and you know, to me it was all about mostly about the feeling. But then I remember thinking like I produced my own videos in my backyard, and they just didn't look like a movie, and I was obsessed. That's all I thought about. Like, how do I make it look that way? And YouTube was really nothing at this point.
Right.
But I was obsessed with it. So what was it? What do you think was the driving force behind that obsession for you to make it look as good as possible?
I don't know. I can't really explain that. You know, because we were dealing with such old technology at the time. And it was like, how do I make it look like that? I mean, this looked better than what your tube cameras. Because we shot on tube cameras.
It was completely different technology.
It was.
It wasn't like today you can use the same camera to shoot TV as you can for film. It's not always that way, but then it was a completely different type of technology.
Yeah. Well, there was this, I would stay they would let me stay at the access station all night long if I wanted to. So I was working there at the time, but then the only time that I could actually work on my own show was like off hours, you know? So, I mean, they couldn't be paying you to be doing your own projects, you know, and stuff like that. So I was doing this, and we got this new computer in the video toaster and with all these goofy wipes and stuff like that. But there was one little button down in the corner. I'm like, what is this button, you know, that you click on? Well, what it did is you would click on it, and it would almost slow down like the frame rate almost kind of give it that look. So, you know, the difference, I mean, image wise, you know, a TV show looks more flat, right? And more video-ish. Well, this little button that was in this computer, it kind of separated that. So it gave it more of a 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional look, and just kind of slowed everything just a hair down. And it made all the difference. It looked like film. So I was like, that.
So like from a frame rate perspective, it felt more like 24 than like a...
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So I'm like, that's
step one.
That is step one. And that is one key of making me stand out from others. And never told anyone about that little button because no one would touch it. You know? So I was just
That's my secret.
That's my secret, you know, even though it was there, because people are like, oh, I'm not going to, you know, they didn't touch that. But the whole thing was too, is just the lighting and how I shot. A lot of that show was all handheld with the big cameras. And then you were tethered to the deck, the 3/4 deck and stuff like that. So that was kind of my key into doing that. And that's what made it stand out. And I knew after the first, you know, probably few months that the show was going to be a success, because then we started getting interviewed by local newspapers, Chicago Tribune, Chicago Sun-Times. Oprah reached out to us at one time. She's like, to have it on her show, you know. We were going to all these film fest and winning best show, best editing, best, you know, cinematography. We were just blowing through all of those, you know. And, you know, you take the whole cast that, you know, it was a few of us that were doing that at the time. And the thing is that I couldn't keep up with it, you know, after doing it for so many years. I think I ended it back in 99, you know.
Okay. Were you born yet by this time?
I was 4.
Yeah. So that's where it was like, okay, you know, I can't keep up with this. I'm not getting paid for this. Where's my next move? Where am I going to next? And I'm like, well, at the time, WGN had a 24-hour news station in the suburbs of Oak Brook. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to go dabble in news, or I'm going to try to get into news and get the workings of that. So I applied, and I already had someone on the inside that put in a good word for me. And I went there and I learned how to, I was already doing floor directing and shooting cameras and editing at the other studio. So I'm like, oh, this should be easy for me. But news was a completely different thing, especially a 24-hour news station. So I went and learned how they did their floor directing, working multiple cameras, working RoboCams, you know, because you would control the cameras from another room and stuff like that. And you would have to go through each department, like floor directing, running teleprompter at the same time, cueing your anchor and all that. And then I went on to learn RoboCam, and then they would put you into sound. And then if you wanted to get promoted, you had to move out of that so-called floor directing camera sound and get promoted up to like editing was the next level. So then you're cutting pieces for the news, you know, and doing that. And then editing would also require you to be the playback person of that show. So if you're cutting that show of those spots for the news, then you would play those back. So
when it airs.
Yeah. So you're queuing those up. It was just crazy. Wow. I mean, it was a crazy way of doing things. But so I did that for about a year. And then the TV station that I was working at, I got to know a lot of good directors and everything there at the news station. And I had one director, he was the morning director, and like call in and come in at 5 a.m. and no one really wanted to work with him. They're like, he's really tough. He's really tough. And then someone on his team asked me can I fill in for them? I'm like, oh yeah, I want to see how tough this guy is. So I was RoboCam. I can remember this very clearly. So you would have these joysticks that look like game pads, and that's how you controlled the cameras. And, they would have to move the camera from side to side to put it in, to fill in the box that's next to them, in the news and stuff like that. Well, I drink so I had to be there at like, I don't know, 3 a.m. and would always drink so much coffee. And this is my first day working for this guy. And as this director, and I come in, he's like, hey, go in. I go into my little door, close it, and it's a big screen door. You're right next to the director and the producers over here, and then whoever's pulling up graphics, and you can kind of see out that door, but then you had your monitors in front of you and you're controlling the camera and stuff like that. No joke, when they told me the show starts going, I think it's the 5 a.m. newscast, and he's like, pan for box, and no joke, I had so much coffee that morning. I was like, and that cold camera just swung. And you saw the studio. No. I almost took out the floor director and stuff like that. I'm like, and he's like, this is going to be a long day, or a long 2 weeks, as I was filling in for 2 weeks. And, I could just see out of the corner of my eye, the producer and everything, like, oh no, this guy's going to hate me. But he actually became really good friends. And when the time came for me leaving, he's like, Kevin, what do you really want to do in this industry? What do you want to do? He goes, this is a good fallback, to fall back on this news industry because it paid well to be out there, to be a shooter and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, I want to go make films. And he's like, go do it. And so, because it was really hard for me to leave that. Yeah. Because it's an industry, and you get to meet a lot of people. And so I'm like, okay. So
how did you make that jump into being a DP then? Was it like straight to DP?
Well, I felt like I was always DPing, whether it was at the local station, I was doing all that, but it was a matter of, owning your own camera kind of. I mean, I worked for the public access station. I went to go work for news. I was doing news and the public access station at the same time. It was breaking up because my schedule worked out that way.
So you had like a broadcast camera of your own?
Not yet, not at this time. And I eventually went back to the public access station because they offered me production manager or something like that, and it paid a lot more. And so I did that for a while. But then, unfortunately, I had a really verbal abuse boss on that side because he just did not like me for some reason. Could never figure that out. But loved what I produced for them because it brought a lot of awards for that department, but verbally abusive. And I was trying to find a way out and stuff like that. And this was an ongoing case a lot. It was really happening a lot more, and it just made you feel uncomfortable going into work. And there was days that, you forget to put a credit on one of the shows that I was doing for free and getting them all this recognition. I forgot to put a credit in there. And I walk in one morning and there's tapes, 3-quarter tapes thrown across the control room. The cases are broken, stuff like that. I'm like, what happened here? And he's like, you're done. You are suspending this show for X amount of months because you did not put a credit in here. You did not thank the Village of Downers Grove, So I was like, and I'm okay with saying that because it was not a great experience. So eventually I had another gentleman coming down along the line. He owned a production shop in Downers Grove, and was bugging me for years to come and work for him. He's like, hey, we're trying to get more commercial work in and do things. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I feel pretty comfortable where I'm at right now and stuff like that. Well, eventually the verbal abuse got so bad that I couldn't do it anymore. So I did go work for this other guy. And this was back in 2002.
Okay.
So I did that in 2002 and, wanting to be on my own, but it was just I could never figure out how to make that connection to find clients and do my own thing, especially when you don't have a camera yet.
Yeah.
I think between 2002 and 2003, I invested in a Sony DSR 250 camera.
That's what I learned on.
Did you really?
Yeah. That's what the college had.
Yeah.
DSR 250s.
Yeah, 250s. So
first one I bought was
DV cam tape.
Yeah.
DV cam tape. Yeah.
First one I bought was the DSR 200, which is a slight step down.
I had one of those as well too. So, and I still have the DSR 250 to this day, and it still works. But
And you have it with you.
I know that I didn't fit in my bag. But yeah, so I did, so I went and worked for this other guy for a year, brought in a little bit of commercial work, and I was primarily an editor there too, but I was shooting as well too, because they recognized that I can do both. And so
this was corporate commercial kind of work, or what?
Yeah, corporate commercial. They did weddings, but they brought me in to bring in more of the commercial corporate work. So my 1 year anniversary came around, and this was in 2003, and I remember this day very clearly. It was the end. I was finishing up cutting a project. It was on a Monday, and it had to be passed off to the client on Tuesday. So, my 1 year review comes up. I walk. Everyone left, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to do your 1 year review?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay. Do you mind staying afterwards?" I'm like, "No, that's fine. I'm gonna finish up the edit, and then I'll come down to your office." And I sit down in my chair, his chair, and he's like, "So how do you like it here?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm enjoying it. Good people to work with. Interesting projects and stuff like that." And in the back of my head, I knew going into it, I didn't want to be there forever. A couple of years, maybe 2 or 3. And the next words out of his mouth, he's like, "I have to let you go today. We can't afford you." This was on a Monday at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And this was back in 2003. And I'm like, okay. I got up and walked out. And from that day on, I was a freelancer. Never gone back to work for somebody.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's a different world. Like,
it is.
I mean, whether you're trusting a corporation or a small business or whatever it is, to be your sole, source of income, or being an individual responsible for that, it's a different mindset.
Yeah, it's such a. I remember when I made that decision as well. It's like, at least it's in my own hands.
Right.
That was my big thing. It's at least I can. If I am not working, and I understand sometimes it's not fully on you, but you can always do something about it. Whereas a job, it's like that. Yeah. On a Monday. Yeah. At 5 o'clock. Yeah. 5:30, and you're gone. Yeah. What do you think you have? I know we're running out of time here. We've covered a lot. There's a lot more I want to cover, but what have you learned most about finding your own work and just the whole so that was from 2003. 2003 and on. What's that process been like, and what have you learned most about just getting your own work, getting your own clients? Or do you work with people who have their own clients, or did you?
I mean, well, they had their own clients, the people that I used to work for. Obviously they had their repeat clients that would come in a lot, or they would be part of they would have a big brand behind them that would keep coming to them. So, and doing the work. But I made connections along the way. I mean, but I did have like a contract that it was never the plan to go out and go after their clients to get work, because I signed a signed off on that. You can't do that, you know? And I knew better. Don't do that.
Yeah. That's a short-lived way of freelancing.
Yeah. You want to end your career really quick. Go after a production company's client, and that would not be a good thing. But I met a lot of people through that. It's been a roller coaster ride, no joke.
Yeah.
Ever since 2003, you're going to have your good years, you're going to have your bad years, you're going to have years that you don't get anything, and makes you question, did I make the right move? All I knew is that I was tired of being kind of abused by the system, almost kind of in regards to, like, I was told this is what I can and cannot do, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go out and find clients. And, I knew people back then, friends and stuff like that, that were also in the industry. So I was starting to come on as their camera operator and stuff like that. And, buying the DSR 250 camera, I was like, okay, I got to start somewhere. I got to find the money somewhere, to make this happen. I got to have a camera at least.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I just kind of pushed myself out there. And still, this was, you had internet, but, you didn't have the social media, 2003, you didn't have Instagram, you didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
So it's all word of mouth, it's like, oh, who shot for you? And that's kind of how it worked. It was networking that way. And, considered still being pretty young back in 2003. And, who's going to trust this young guy to come out there and shoot for, stuff that I've done, it's like, cutting a reel or something like that. It's like, oh, it's a bunch of corporate stuff, and it's like, but corporate pays well. So, I caught on to that really fast, and commercials. So corporate and commercials. And I did a lot of that. And just kind of kept moving forward, just kind of plugging away at it each and every time and figuring out how I can build up a name, build up my name in the industry as a cinematographer. So, and it wasn't until, I'm trying to remember what year it was, maybe 2009, there was a director. I've done a lot of editing work for Second City, the comedy.
Oh, yeah.
In Chicago.
Yeah.
So I had a friend that worked there. I was brought in as an editor. So I was doing a lot of freelance editing and stuff like that. I would come in there and cut their pieces. They worked with a lot of big brands. So I would go in there and do that. And they had their directors, And my one friend one day was talking in his office and was talking to the one director, came in. I think I was cutting one of his pieces for him. And he just turned to the director and he's like, Kevin's a shooter, right? He's like, no, I didn't know that. And the next words that came out of his mouth, and he's like, is he fast? Can he shoot fast? And, my friend's like, yeah, I think he can do that for you. So
with the news broadcast background, you have to.
Right?
Yeah. So it was so strange because then that director reached out to, I knew of him, and he reached out to me. He's like, hey, I got this short little tiny comedy film I want to shoot. Would you be interested? Because I got my first Red camera. So I had my first Red camera. And
is that the Red one?
Red Epic Dragon. So
okay.
That was my first Red camera, which was purchased at the end of 2014.
Okay.
And so I got that, and he's like, I don't have money for you or anything like that, but I just want to know if you'd be interested in doing that. And I'm like, yeah, why not? I have nothing else going on. I'm editing and stuff like that. And in the background, what was happening, I was kind of auditioning for him, for his projects. And I didn't realize that right away. I went out and shot this film, and it did well. I went back and he allowed me to do the coloring on it and stuff like that. They had another editor do that. I did the coloring. He got it back. He's like, Kevin, this looks amazing. This looks so good. And I'm like, oh, thanks. And sure enough, that built up that relationship and that trust in me that I could take on a big project. And the first big project was at SNA Studios in their large stage. and it was for Jeep.
Wow.
And I walk in
Wow.
there.
I felt like throwing you into the deep end.
Yeah.
I was thrown in there, and I'm like,
As a DP.
as a DP.
Wow.
DP. I don't know if the lighting guys were too crazy about me. They're like, who is this guy coming in that I've never worked with before? Because they had their regular team, you know, that they worked with all the time.
Yeah.
So I would say that was probably my break into, you know, Jeff gave me that opportunity to kind of really show what I was capable of doing and to be a part of a big brand. And the big brands kept on coming after that, you know, Jeep, Sony PlayStation. It was just, they kept getting larger and larger and stuff like that. And then the short film that I did well, and they loved the color. You know, people loved the coloring. It took so many awards and stuff like that. Everyone was like, "Oh, who's your DP? Who was your DP? You know, who's your DP on this?" And then it got back to me through his other friends and coworkers. He's like, "Jeff really likes you. You know, he highly, you know, respects you and what you do, and he's really happy with your work." I'm like, "Oh, that's good to hear." You know. So it was like saying, you know, thank you for hustling and making him look good as well too. So and you know, I had to prove myself. You know, I had to prove myself. I still have to prove myself to this day.
Yeah.
You're always reinventing the wheel, or you're reinventing yourself. I think every 6 months to a year now. I mean, I recently just released my website as a DP. You know, so if you go to KevinOtterness.com, it's only meant for desktop, still struggling with the phone app look, but for desktop, and just released a new reel, you know.
I'm excited to see that, because I looked at your website probably a year ago, or maybe a little over 6 months ago.
Okay, so if you just go to KevinOtterness.com, it's all there now, the reel. But yeah, look at it on a desktop, because that's what it was built to be looked at, not a phone. So the phone app will
excited. I
eventually
love looking
get
at reels and new websites, people. It's fun.
Yeah, and I purposely planned that to. I mean, I worked on that reel for so long because I'm probably my worst critic when it comes to my work. So it's just like, oh, you know, there's a lot of great cinematographers out there. There's a lot of good stuff. And it's like, you know, I haven't been given the budgets, really large budgets, to bring in the big toys to make things look really cool. You know, people got these car commercials and they're whipping around. They got techno cranes and all that. And here I am taking a Dana Dolly or just a regular Movi Pro and trying to make it look like we spent $1 million on this production when we really didn't, you know? And so, you know, combining all that stuff together, I mean, I've had a DP in the past tell me, he's like, "Kevin, you don't give yourself enough credit." And he's a well-known DP in the industry. And so I, you know, like I said, I just released that recently, you know, right before NAB. I put out my new website, my new reel. I haven't been to NAB in.
Yeah, it's good to see you. I feel bad. I was like, I passed you by and we were like on our way to something. And I'm like, "Hey, Kevin, I'll catch back up with you." And never did.
I know.
It was such a crazy week.
I ran into Josiah a couple times, but I mean, the whole point of going out to NAB, and this is another point I want to make to other people that are trying to get into this industry, is that you have to force yourself to get out there and network.
It's all about the relationships.
It's all about the relationships. It's not about the show. It's not about the gear. A little bit about the gear. A little bit about the gear and what we all would really like to have.
NAB is all about the gear.
Yeah. So it was just
There's so much gear.
But the gear is just the candy to get you there.
True that.
The meal
It
is the
is.
relationships.
Yeah.
And
Ooh, I
so
like that.
I made up my list of people that I'm like, okay, you know, these are the people I'm going to introduce myself to, because nowadays we have YouTube, a lot of good creators, filmmakers, great cinematographers that are doing it all on their own, and they have their YouTube channels being very successful at that. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I feel like the old dad in this industry, because these people are so young, but with this platform that they have, they can show their work so much. I didn't have that growing up in this industry.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I didn't even want an Instagram page until my one friend, she was like, "Kevin, you really should get on Instagram." I got an account, but I let it sit there for a couple of years before I did anything with it.
And now you're up to like 45,000 followers.
yeah, I'm trying to, it'd be nice to be up to that 50,000 follower mark, but that's really kind of beside
that's still
the point.
impressive though, because it's people who are, it's not the average Joe wanting to follow you.
Sure.
It's very specific, targeted people in the industry.
It
you know
is.
what I mean? That's great.
Yeah, and my Instagram is all geared towards work. There's nothing personal about it.
Yeah.
This is what I do. This is what I do for a living.
No cat pictures.
No cat pictures. None of that. Once in a while, it'd be great to put something there. But I'm more of a personal kind of person, so I kind of I want it strictly to be about work, and what I'm capable of doing, and what I can provide to a director or a producer, a film, commercial, all that. But the whole point going to NEB was to meet these people that I've never met before, but I knew of online, and be like, you know what, I have to get out there and network, because the industry, I feel like right now is, I don't know, I think we're in some kind of transition happening right now. I don't know what it is. For me, that's how it feels. So I think what I'm still trying to do is I'm trying to find my people to work with. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm trying to do. Who are my people that understand and respect the process, as we were talking about earlier, from 100%. The beginning to the end through coloring, that understand that, and vice versa, being respected as a DP cinematographer for what I do. It's funny, real quick. There's one thing I have on my website. It was from TV Technology Magazine, and they did an article on me at one point in time, and their quote was, one of the most industry's most respected cinematographers. And I'm like, oh, if only that was true, if only that was true. But I put that quote up on my website, So yeah, it's just like, there's more, you just have to get out there. You have to push yourself.
It is a strange time. I mean, I get the whole, like the YouTube universe, or it's a strange, like you'll go out, like NAB is a perfect example of just such a broad mix of people. There's people that are more traditional and have, like Dean Cundy was out there, shot all the movies basically we saw growing up.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then there's these people that are just a big deal to a lot of people that maybe you and I would have no idea. Like, I don't know who you are.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, I have, 1 million followers. It's a different kind of time, and
it is.
And they might be doing something similar, or they might be doing something completely different. But it's
and that's how they're getting noticed too. And I think the whole thing with Hollywood right now, I think George Lucas said it the best at Cannes. He was saying something like,
no original thought.
No original thought. There's no original thought. It's all remakes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you kind of sit back and you're like, who has the original thought? Well, if you sit back and take a look at everything, it's just like, I feel like Hollywood is more of a bunch of suits, and they're not the artist. They're just the money makers and pushing numbers around. And so it's like, these YouTubers, these creator filmmakers, indie filmmakers and stuff like that, Hollywood should be a little scared of that, because a lot of things are streaming nowadays. Hollywood doesn't give a movie enough time to stay in a theater.
Yeah.
I mean, The Fall Guy that just came out. They left it in the theater for 2 weeks, and then
it's out, or it's gone already.
It's gone. 2 weeks.
I wanted to see that.
2 weeks. I wanted to see it too, and people are saying it was a great movie. Well, it's because it's about our industry as well too.
Yeah.
In a comedic way. But I wanted to go see it, and they're like, "Oh, well, they're just not making the money, so we're going to pull it. And we're going to go to streaming." It's like, give a movie some time to get. Word of mouth. When people go to see it, they pass it along.
That's crazy. How used to be out there for 2 weeks.
Wow.
2 weeks. So you wonder where the problems
they were longer. I mean, years ago they were in theaters for a month, 2 months. I feel like
2 months, 3 months, 4 months. You could go a whole summer. Like, I mean, if you go back to films like Star Wars or Raiders of the Lost Ark or Titanic, look how many months that picture was in the theater. They're just not giving films enough time to catch on, and that's just sad, because it's just like, you have all these great people that are making these films, but I just think that the corporate side of filmmaking just doesn't understand the art anymore. So, and they don't know what's good anymore. So you have a lot of indie filmmakers now that are creating their own stories, and those are what things that people are latching onto.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think? I lost my train. I had a question because 2 questions popped in my head, but I forgot the original.
That's okay.
I was going to say, to wrap it up, and as I said previously, I want to have you back if you can make it back sometime.
Come back, yeah.
There's a lot more I think I'd want to dive into, just working the actual job itself, because I think there's a lot that goes into it, and I have a lot more questions there. But just to wrap it up as a final question, oh my gosh. What was I going to say?
What was the final question?
My final question.
What's the meaning of life, Kevin?
Yeah, what was that? No. So you've been making your films when you were little, and then you kind of went more a little bit of corporate way.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you ever want to DP/direct your own story?
It's a great question, because I'm glad you reminded me of that, because so as going back this past year, looking at things and how work has been and people that I've worked with, great people, some people not so great, people that I would never work with again, more good than the bad. But I made a decision at the beginning of this year that I'm going to go out there and create something for myself, something that I want to see, and not have that person over my shoulder, telling me what I can and cannot do, or how I should color something, how I should edit something, and go create my own work. Because there's a lot of young filmmakers out there doing just that. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like taking a side note from them and be like, I can do that. I have the gear to go do it. Mm-hmm. Do I have the funding? No.
Yeah.
So how do I do it in a small way? And how are they doing it? Because, not their projects are not all funded either. They're doing it with like one-man band. They're kind of directing and shooting, and they find an actor or an actress or two and take a couple friends out.
It's a hustle.
It's a hustle, and you just go do it, and you make, whether it's a really tiny short film or if it's a 30-minute film or whether it's a feature film. So I've made the decision. I've already started, coming up with ideas and stuff like that. Now, whether I will get that off by the end of the year or into production, we will see. But I have to do it for myself. And I have to go out there and I show people what I'm capable of doing. Yes, I have all this work on my Instagram page and stuff like that. And that's where a lot of people see my work. That's where they can find me and stuff like that. But, this is what I'm here to do. I love going and shooting other people's films. We didn't get into a story about, why I took on the last film that I did. But I took it on for a reason of, it has to deal with a bully, and I was bullied as a kid. I was bullied through my teenage years. I was bullied.
And at work, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I was bullied by bosses that I had. So it was always a goal of mine to be on my own and go create something of my own. And so now it's just like I've been over the past, I'm not a writer, but I can definitely tell a story. I can definitely tell a story if I want to do it. Yeah. More maybe a visual story, but that's where those ideas, originate from. So, that's my main goal, is to go out there, shoot, direct, get a small team together, go do it. It's so funny, as I was driving down into Rockford here, I was looking at some of the side streets. I'm like, oh, these are some great exterior locations. You got a little bit of hills in there and stuff like that. Some cool spots to shoot.
Keep us in the loop. Maybe we can help you.
I would come out here and shoot at your studio for sure.
Let's do it.
So,
That's beautiful. I love that, man. That's a beautiful reason to do it.
You just have to go out there and do it. And you have to have something that inspires you, like this little guy here that inspired me, you know? And
that's such a cool token. You know, just there's certain things that I'll have in my office that I'll look at, and it's like one is a picture of me in the orphanage in Russia, and that I look at that and I go, that was a different life. I'm gonna make something totally different of my life, you know, and like something like that brings you right back. That's so cool. Count me in if you need help. Count me in. Josiah and I were at the beginning of the year. We had a very similar conversation, and it was. Josiah said something very kind of profound. Believe it or not, it came from no, but he was like, when we were kids, we had all of the energy and the mental, you know, fortitude just to create.
Yes.
No matter what it took, just to go out there and just to film it and to make a short film or a feature film. Yeah. And somewhere along the way, you get so caught up in your regular work, the corporate job, the stuff that pays, which obviously you need that to live. You need money. Yeah. You need to live.
Yeah.
But we were talking, and it's like you lose that drive and that kind of fight to just go out and just do whatever it takes to get that done, like we did when we were kids. Yeah. We had all the time as kids, none of the resources. Right. Now we have all the resources and no time. You know, so that was it's very interesting. We what was it, January, February, something like that?
Probably,
we that was a pact. We both were like, we have to go and be more. We have to do a short film. We have to work on a short
and
feature.
Here we are 5 months later having done nothing.
Yeah. Well, we did do a short film.
Wow. See? And I can say this, count me in too, because, you know, it's like you guys, that the people that I'm looking to work with, you know, it's friends that understand the process.
Sure.
They get it, you know, because nowadays it's so much rush, shoot. And it's just like, am I getting good quality stuff? It's just like, I don't
at least understand that there is a process and there is a threshold to be able to make something good.
Absolutely.
But do we necessarily have to have a techno crane?
No.
You know,
no, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't need that big stuff. Make it work. You don't need a high-end expensive camera to go out and create something. Mm-hmm. Go create it. Just go do it. And, you know, and I needed to do that to myself more. Kevin, just go out there, go shoot something, to be shooting something, keep up those skills. Yeah. Because it's few and far in between projects. So, you just have to go out there and you have to do it. And like I said, setting goals and finding the people that, hey, I want to do that. You know, I understand it's not going to be much money or if I'm going to even make anything doing it. But if altogether, as I was saying in the beginning, it takes a team to make something look really good.
Yeah.
And those are the projects that if you take the time and do them right, those are the ones that are going to succeed. Mm-hmm. I believe. I think it is.
Yeah.
I mean, there are projects that you can slap together and, oh my gosh, you did that in a record time and can do well, for sure. But, you know, being able to have breathing room on set and stuff like that, you really need that. You need that time to...
even for a quality of the experience itself, for the people that you're inviting into this process.
Yeah.
It's like they're volunteering their time or working for a discounted rate, and yet you're working them for 14 hours and feeding them pizza. You know, it's like,
yeah. It's just a matter. It's being collaborative, working together, and that's and having a good team of people that get it and that don't have egos or it's all about themselves and stuff like that. You're there to work as a team. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, a lot of people are like, you know, when I was shooting short film, you know, it feels like it's all on my shoulders to make this happen, to make my day, and to get all these shots in.
You're the producer, the director, the DP.
Yeah. So it's, just getting out there, go do it. Yeah. Go shoot something.
Yeah. Let us know. You know, we've been having quite a few of these conversations, and part of me just wonders if it's just the state of where the industry is in and the film industry, you know, because I wonder if people aren't being fed what they want to see, you know what I mean? So they feel like they have to go and create it themselves. You know, because this,
where's the next Star Wars?
yeah, we've been having a lot
Where
of
is that?
these conversations, and it's, you know,
I think
we
there's a
gotta-
lot of truth behind that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of truth behind what you just said, because it's just like, it's like, you know, we're not seeing it in the big movies.
What's the last film you saw that you were inspired and thought that made you feel something?
Oh, The Creator.
Oh, really?
And that wasn't in the theater that long either.
See, I didn't really care for that film.
Oh, see, well, here's
I didn't see it, so
okay. I
I
enjoyed
thought
it.
it had really good sequences.
So Gareth Edwards, the same guy that directed and shot, because he's a director shooter. He likes to operate the camera himself. Shot Rogue One as well.
Oh,
too.
that was a great movie.
Yes,
Yeah.
great movie. Gareth Edwards, but they
Oh, I
shot.
can see the similarities.
Yes,
Yeah.
they shot on the Sony
FX3.
F3, you know, and saved the studios a ton of money. Now, obviously, you know, having a great special effects house like ILM to come in to incorporate what they were doing and all that, but that inspired me. That inspired me. I mean, I get inspired like watching behind the scenes
Yeah.
sometimes more than I do watching the actual film.
sure.
But yeah, I think it was last, I can't remember, but I went to go see The Creator. There's no one in the theater. Maybe one other person went there, saw it, sat down, watched it, and enjoyed it. And then as soon as I got back home, I was like, okay, where's the behind the scenes? When are they going to release the behind the scenes? Because I want to know
had
how
quite a
they
bit,
did this. Yeah, they
actually.
did.
Yeah.
And just in how they handled that production. And I think Hollywood needs to take a lesson from that, you know, from these guys that can come in there and create something with, like I said, you don't need the best camera in the world. They took an FX3, nice image, great image on that camera, but look what they did. They created a feature film that just did not get the recognition I think it deserved.
Yeah, I mean, small crew too.
Very
a lot of the
small crew.
a lot of the crews were very small, and they would go. A lot of their budget was spent on locations.
It was.
You're not in a studio. You're not in a green screen space or a LED wall.
You're there. You're there.
video
it's
wall.
practical.
Yeah.
And that's one big thing with me. I love shooting practical.
Yeah, and you can tell that's a part of the, you know, as far as the whole story, it wasn't. I don't know if it was really for me, but you can tell that they were actually there in these super interesting locations that felt like another world in a way.
Absolutely.
Combined with the visual effects. So
Right.
anyway, we could talk more.
Yep.
Kevin, super great talking with you. I want to have you back. Let's do it sometime soon within the next couple months. I know it's between all of our schedules. It's difficult to do, but a lot more I want to dive into. Where can people find you?
So they can find me. A lot of people, my following is on Instagram. So just my name, Kevin Otterness. Go there on Instagram. You can find me there.
Yeah, you post a lot of great stuff on there.
Yeah, that's where I
enjoy
post behind the scenes, my actual work, finished work, all that, coloring, everything that has to do with film making, I guess you would call it. And then they can also go to my new website now, kevinotterness.com. Find me there.
Beautiful.
But if you really want to, you know, see my work, check out my Instagram for sure.
Instagram, yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. I'm looking forward to checking out the website.
Great.
So thank you so much, man.
All right, thanks for
Appreciate
having
your
me.
time. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode. Stay tuned for the next one. Yeah.
Well, that the first time was with the gaffer, but then the second he's the one that spoke up. But then there was another shoot after that I thought we had our own room, and then all of a sudden I'm just, have a stranger in my room.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know this person. Did not talk. And stuff like that. I'm like, this is so uncomfortable, you know, and stuff like that. So I think
a hotel room's so small.
it was so small. And then you're like, okay, who's getting up first in the morning, showering? What time is everyone getting up and going? And so you just kind of,
can you take a 10-2? When's an appropriate time?
yeah, can I have some little bit of privacy, and stuff like that, and it's just like, does this person snore? Does this person, it's just like,
yeah. Oh man, that's a good point.
CPAP machine going
Yeah.
on.
exactly. So you're like, oh my gosh.
Completely hypothetical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Half of the crew that we just worked with are on CPAPs. Yeah. You hear the
It's hilarious.
yeah.
Yeah, but you go through those things and you're just kind of like, I've been doing this for a really long time. I'm going to start making this is what's going to require for me to be on this shoot, especially for something like that long,
Yeah. 100%.
You just need your own space. And I'm like, hey, if you're traveling, then you can obviously afford to, pay for a hotel room.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be top of the line, but something that we're safe and,
Yeah. Yeah. That's important.
be comfortable in. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just, Anyway, not to belabor that point, but
As long as it's 5 stars and your quarters has at least 3 rooms, that's all I need.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
Private butler service. That's it.
Oh, I hear you.
The what's the menu that you like?
Market price.
Yeah,
market price.
Only eats market price.
Yep. Market price.
Just basically, you have to have standards in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was gonna ask. So your short film, you just got off a short film.
Are we
yeah?
recording on?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
Not
Good.
yet.
Yeah.
So, I do want to dive into it a little bit,
Yeah.
but I just saw from your Instagram.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was a decent crew. Like you had some pretty elaborate setups. Was it how big of a crew was it?
Yeah. 30 to 40 people.
Wow.
For a short film, indie film.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a short film. So there, I'll get into during the podcast why I decided to take on the project, but yeah, it was large. It was no small indie film.
Yeah.
I mean, just the scope of it.
Yeah.
And how many people were actually on set and how many shots we had to get in one day.
How'd you get connected to it?
I was found, I don't know. I don't know if it was through my Instagram, how the director came across me.
Okay.
How do I explain this without, I won't say this in the podcast, even though I'm usually very honest and opinionated, but, so I was found after the first DP choice was let go.
Oh, okay.
And then they contacted me and they're like, hey, got this short film. I'm looking for, I was told I was looking for they were looking for a DP. So I didn't know there was a DP before me.
They got the boot.
So none of your crew.
You got kicked off an indie film, didn't you, earlier this year? That's what it was.
Yeah.
Same project.
No,
wait.
Victor, was that you?
We're not working with this dude.
Yeah.
I said something about market price food. I was learning from Josiah. It didn't pan out for me.
Oh, but yeah. So they reached out to me, and the director first reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, I want to send over the script. Tell me what you think about it." Blah 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 blah. And I'm like, "Okay." So I read the script. It was a great script. I could relate to the script. And so then he's like, okay, I'll have my producer reach out to you. So the producer reached out to me and he's like, hey, I just wanted to know, what, are you interested in doing this film and stuff like that? I'm like, yeah. And then it became, there was some red flags that kind of came up in the beginning. First off is that the director wanted to use 2 cameras. right from the get-go. And I'm like,
For like every scene.
yeah, for every scene. And I was just like, I go, you don't have the budget for 2 cameras. I go, you need camera, you need another camera person, operator. You need another first AC to pull focus. You need, and this was before, obviously I was hired, but then I was just like, well, who's the gaffer? Who's the gaffer on this? Because I'm like, you're asking for 2 cameras. Usually 2 camera setups. I mean, you're going to have a good sized gaffer team with 2 cameras. Yeah. I mean, it takes a little bit more than just, for 2 cameras. I always think it takes more for 2 cameras. I don't know from your perspective.
Yeah, you got to be more selective about where you put the lights to.
Right. Yeah. So that it works when you're cross shooting. So they're both, your actors are lit and stuff like that. So long story short, is that, they came back to me a couple times and they're like, so the director wants to know if you'll do this pro bono. And I'm like, I go, nope. I cannot provide you 2 red cameras, a whole camera department package, and myself for pro bono. I can't do that.
For how many days?
For 3 days.
Okay.
For 3 days. And, it's short, but it was just like, I can't do that. I go, there hasn't been any work, I mean, last year was dead. This year is still really slow. And you're just at that point, and they're like, well, for an executive producer credit, I'm like, nope, I don't. I've been there. I've done that. I'm not going to do that. So they're like, well, can we make a deal with you? So give me your price. So I gave them a price, and then they worked me down. And I go, okay, you guys are going to work me down, but I go, you're not going to get 2 camera operators, 2 first ACs, possibly a second AC, or possibly 2 of them for the amount that you're paying me, because, you're not offering them enough money. You're not offering them their normal day rate. I mean, it was extremely low. It was like a couple $100 they were offering operators.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, they're like, do you know anybody? I'm like, here's how I kind of work. I work, if I'm going to bring on a camera team, I'm going to bring on someone that I've worked with before, that knows my gear. And I know that we work together really good. So it's almost like, there doesn't have to be all this communication going on. We just know what to do. Same with my gaffer that I work with. I've known him forever. But they were just coming in. I'm like, I cannot branch out to somebody and ask them to come on a project for $200 on a 12-hour day for 3 days.
Yeah.
I go, as an operator, because they're going to turn around and look at me, because as I mentioned in my post that I sent you last night, I'm a big advocate for people getting what they're worth, you know?
Yeah.
So I told the producer, I go, no, I can't do that. I go, on top of that, I go, you're not going to get 2 cameras at the same time. It's just not going to happen, even though the director was pushing for it. And I go, I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal with you. I'll take the price that you offered me. That's for me and my gear, the whole entire camera department. I go, I'll bring both cameras. I will bring a gimbal, a Movi Pro. But I go, we're not going to run 2 cameras simultaneously at the same time. It's just impossible to do with the schedule that we were on at that time that we were being allowed.
Yeah.
And so finally got them to agree to that. And no joke, there was 30 shots on day 1. 30 shots on day 1 and 7 hours to complete it in.
Whoa.
30 shots on day 2. They were back to back, Saturday and a Sunday.
You got them all?
I got them all.
Oh.
And I walked away. And this is something we can talk about. I walked away feeling really good on.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Probably the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
I was like, did I just do that? I mean, and they dropped 1 shot or 2, 2 shots here and there, or they combined it something. But each of those setups, I mean, we were on location. We weren't in a studio. We were on location. We were at a school. We were using a classroom. We were in a gym. I mean, all that stuff. But overall, long story short, is that they just didn't have the money. They didn't want to spend the money.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people come to me like, I've worked with great directors. I've worked with not so great directors. But they're like, well, I want it to be beautiful. I want it to be beautiful. And I'm like, I can only do so much in time. I go, that's why you're hiring me, to make it look really good,
Yeah.
But I never had such a hard time with a director in my entire career.
Oh, on this one?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You need a good chef, but you give them the time to cook too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Look at you.
Just because, exactly. And just because you, there's another saying too in regards to a chef, because you own these expensive knives and stuff like that, doesn't mean you know how to cook. Same thing. It's like, you want this look and you want this quality, but by owning a fancy Arri camera or Red camera, do you know how to work that camera?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how to set up a great looking shot, or do you know how to light it? Stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it was a real struggle, and I got through it. But I mean, there were shots in there that were easily. He wanted a lot of gimbal shots, and no joke, we loaded in at I'm always to my locations like an hour early. I like to beat everybody there because I'm
really?
at the front door. Yeah, I'm there, or I'm the back door, wherever we're going into. Camera department's usually first, and then it's G&E, right there next to us, and then it kind of trickles down after that, depending on the location. And I'm like, I want to be able to load in. I want to get there. I want to give myself enough time. So I think call time was like 6:30, and the first shot, was up at 9, and we're loading, and it was freezing cold outside, so it just kind of slows the process down and all that. But got in there and set up, and the first shot, he wanted me to. He's like, "Are we using the gimbal?" I'm like, we huddled together, the AD, the producer, and stuff like that. We huddled together, and I'm like, guys, there's a lot on this plate. I cannot guarantee you I am going to make this day. I will work efficiently, quickly, but safely. I go, and all the director was just concerned, are we using the gimbal? I'm like, maybe. If I get to it, I go, if I have time to set up the gimbal before our first shot, I will do it. Because I had both of my Red cameras on set. So it was 10 to 9. And the AD's like, ready to go, Kevin? Ready to go? And I'm like, and I just pulled out the gimbal at 10 to 9. And I'm like, I have to mount this whole gimbal. And then we were peeling stuff because they didn't want to spend the money. I was peeling stuff off of a camera to put on the gimbal camera and to make things work, like for extra wireless video and stuff like that. I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be responsible for putting this production behind schedule on day one on the first shot. So I turned to the AD. I turned to the producer. I go, we're canning the gimbal. If I can get to it later on, I'll get to it. I go, I can accomplish all the shots that the director is asking for by using a Dana dolly compared to a gimbal. And it will be less time to set up. I already had the Dana dolly on standby, off on the side. It was ready to go.
I like the look of that better anyway.
I do too.
Yeah.
So, and, there's directors that just don't understand what it takes to put something together like that.
And I think they just think that gimbals equal speed, but in my experience,
Yeah.
they don't
Sure.
always.
Same with having two cameras. Oh, that will just speed everything up.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's
really.
going to do the opposite.
I've had that conversation actually. Yeah. Well, that's a good place to start, Kevin. There's a lot of questions that I have, and I know the interaction between director and DP is one that I'm really wanting to dive into as well, because it's such an important one.
It is.
And yeah, there's just a lot. There's a lot.
I'm not
to
going to
work
badmouth
around.
a director or anything like that.
Absolutely
I
not.
think it's just a matter of people understanding the process and what it takes and what you're expecting from any department, whether it's, lighting or a cinematographer. You want it to look good, but what's it going to take to achieve that? So
Yeah.
I mean, but it was a struggle. But I do want to talk about it because it was overall a great project that I could relate to. The cast and crew was amazing, even though it was a struggle with the director. Overall, I met a lot of good people out of it.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's what's important.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what's important. And moving forward in this industry and stuff like that. I mean, when you have an entire cast and crew and art department, wardrobe, and everything that's contributing to an image, I mean, they are the ones that it's not just me creating that image. It's all of those departments.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. All right. Well, that's a good place to start.
Okay.